Part 4 of the script spoke about the school to prison pipeline, and they go on to define the school to prison pipeline on page 132 as a network of relations that naturalize the movement of youth of color from schools and communities into unemployment, short-term detention, and long-term incarceration. They also go on to state on page 136 that students are marked as deviant because of their race, class, and disability. They go on to support these definitions and statements by speaking about a study that they did at Morgan Elementary School in New York, where they interviewed multiple teachers and held observations. And one of the interviews that really stood out to me is actually discussed on page 142, where Robin, the gym teacher, goes on to say that a lot of her naughty students are fifth graders and that she won't have to basically deal with them anymore because they are going on to junior high next year. And I just can't wrap my head around the fact that a teacher would basically say that. I don't understand why there are teachers out there that rather than wanting to help students, they just go on to say, well, next year just won't be my problem anymore. The last 2 years, the first 2 years after I graduated from college, I worked at a alternative high school for boys with behavioral issues that came from CPS. And I saw a lot of that attitude that was spoken on page 142, like Robin. Some teachers would just basically say, oh, they're leaving soon, they're not going to be a problem anymore, rather than being proactive and thinking about creative interventions or creative ways in order to get the student to be more involved in education or in school in general. A lot of the attitude that teachers carried with them was based on race and class and disability. They thought that, just another African American student that doesn't care about school, which wasn't the case at all. They failed to realize that the student might have been neglected all their lives by teachers or their parents or their communities, and they felt hopeless. After talking to a lot of the students I had, they did tell me, I never really had a teacher that took interest in me. My mom was always working 3 jobs and she was never at home. So when I came home, I was taking care of my brothers and sisters, or, their parents were not making great life choices, or their parents were in either prison or their mom was on drugs, and they just kind of felt hopeless at home, and then they had to go to school and they felt judged for a lot of the things that they had no control in. And instead of the teachers helping them, they were kind of put into this little bubble and passed from one person to the other and never really helped. And that broke my heart. Just because I feel like us as educators, we really need to take interest in our students and help them. Disability or no disability, no matter what race, what class, it is our duty as educators to basically be there for our students and implement those interventions and make them believe in themselves and want to enjoy school and have a great and positive life. The school to prison pipeline has a great effect on students with EBD. And on page 147, it stated that students of color with a disability are more likely to be placed in restrictive settings than their white peers. And then they are limiting their access to general education curriculum, resources, and teachers. And that all starts with the teachers. And that is also stated and highlighted on page 149, stating that deficit thinking and personal judgments on the parts of the teachers play a huge role. Just because educators hold their own biases towards different races, classes, and disabilities, and students end up being placed in restrictive settings that maybe that they don't belong in, all because of the teacher's own personal judgments on that student. So I think it's our responsibility to be more educated and more willing to implement creative interventions and teaching techniques in order to make sure that our students are learning, no matter of their race, their culture, or their disability. So, Kelly, on page 101, it states that the OCR and the NCES approach to counting and sorting students contributes to the persistent pattern of disproportionate representation of African American, Latino, and American Indian students in special education and in discipline referrals that has persisted for at least the past 30 years. So my question to you is, what is the OCR's and the NCES's approach, and how you think it could be changed for the better?